All right, so we're back for another podcast, and I was just mentioning, I think we're up to 20 listeners, or maybe viewers. So I appreciate you guys looking like you might have showered up a little bit and cleaning a little bit. And Jimbo's on his, it is dressed to the nines right now. So actually, I'm getting pretty good feedback, and it's from a different kind of cross section of people. There's coaches, parents, and players. I don't think this is really what we're serving them. It's really what we're trying to feed the adults. So just appreciate it. We're missing Don Menard today. So we were just sitting here waiting for him to show up and not realizing he's in Vancouver. So he went back home. But he did send a note that he is a movie star. So he expects his fan base of 12 to still be here when he gets back. So we were going to talk about we always try to come up with a couple of topics. But we were just talking about something that I think is important to bring up in the industry of lessons, because so much of the softball world is nobility and understanding from the instructor standpoint. And you had brought up a question about cancellation. We'll call it a cancellation policy.
Okay.
And so the question would be, do we advise instructors out there to have a cancellation policy, or to allow people to show up and pay per lesson? So what are your thoughts on that?
A couple different things. I think it depends on the situation you're in. If you're an instructor, number one, if you have to pay for your lessons in advance. I mean, because if you have to block, because basically you're running the cage from the house, and it's all money. So if your cage isn't being used, they feel like maybe one of the other instructors could use that, or somebody else could. So the thing that's troubling is, if it's stuff that could be avoided as far as when they miss, it's tough on the instructor. So basically I have, if they don't give me, let's say 24 hours notice, or if it's not an absolute emergency, then I charge them $20.
Now you said pay in advance as well, so do you have them pay monthly?
I have a few people, but for the most part they play week to week.
Mm-hmm. My advice, my advice to instructors would be to set the policy and then adjust accordingly. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't set a policy, then what happens is you become victimized by so you have 20 lessons scheduled for a day, and on any given day you're going to have 4 have homework, got sick, something happened, mom didn't come home in time, different things like that. And like you had mentioned, it's not that we're asking people to empathize or understand what really happens on the instructor side, but there is that side of it. It's usually about a 5-hour business, so it's not a full work day, it's a cash business. So even though you're adding up the per lesson cash base, well, at the end, if you're honest John about it, you're still paying taxes, and you only have 5 hours to make your money. And if you're not being notified in time, so to get a call at 6 o'clock for an 8 o'clock lesson, it doesn't give you any time you're teaching to refill that spot. So I think it's only right, like as in business, it's like my son with his jiu-jitsu martial arts place, they pay monthly, and and then you adjust accordingly. Somebody doesn't have that income and they need to pay by the lesson, you need to get some type of commitment, but understand that you're paying for that time. Now, I also believe, to anybody that's instructing out there, that what will happen is you'll always get initial resistance, because I think people do fight for their dollar. And there's nothing wrong with fighting for their dollar, and there's nothing wrong with people questioning. If you put yourself on the customer or consumer side, I understand that. But it doesn't take long. And if you create that policy, then what ends up happening, just as if my son is injured or has something going on, and he's still missing his classes, we've paid for those classes, but I'm not asking to be refunded for the weeks that we weren't there. I just look at it as it's a loss. We weren't there. We're paying for their time. So the advice I give to all instructors, make sure you set a policy, and then, like you said, adjust accordingly.
One thing, I'm doing about 45 to 50 lessons a week. And one of the things that happens is I let myself do this, because I try to fit every week. I spend basically Friday, Saturday, and Sunday making out my schedule. And it'd be nice if everybody would keep the same spot, but a lot of times that's impossible with all the meetings, all the different things the kids have to go through. So it's like juggling all these different situations.
Have you found that more to be true? So go back to the days like when Wendy was playing gym, and 10 years ago, that kids are more busy with more things to do during the week right now. Compare that to maybe 10 or 20 years ago.
It's not even close. I mean, they didn't have the EM type classes or things like that. They didn't have practices. coaches, some of the coaches, most of the younger coaches and some of the older coaches practice during the week. Our team doesn't. We're basically a weekend type thing.
Pretty common with a lot of the younger teams.
But and then you got the high school schedule that changes.
And playing games now in the fall and the winter.
Exactly. So you have to understand the best day to give lessons is most likely Monday, as far as high school is concerned, because basically it doesn't conflict with many games. Most of the high school games are either Tuesday and Thursday, or Tuesday and Friday, or things like that.
And Monday can be kind of a rough day physically or emotionally after your weekends of playing.
Exactly.
So I don't, in my experience, I don't know what yours was, but I don't know if the players always performed as well on Mondays. But it's a good pocket day of the week to be able to get your stuff done. Do you remember when Wendy would come? What day of the week it was?
No, I know it was in the afternoon. And, with two kids, because Katie took pitching lessons. And I always expected if we couldn't make it, that's a slot that you're not making the money that you planned on making. Not you, but Doug on the other side. For pitching with Katie. And I expected to pay. It's not his fault that I wasn't there. I did learn with Doug, though, and maybe a little, I don't know. If you have the last lesson of the evening, and you can't make it, there's a lot more forgiveness when you call and say we're not going to make it, because he's not standing around and he can go home early. He's not really out anything. But if you're right in the middle of 10 lessons that day,
Sure.
You're not going to fill that.
The last lesson of the day also can get a little extra time sometimes. So.
It absolutely can.
And also when you have kids that show up late, how tough, because we have pitching and hitting in our cages. Or I mainly work with slappers. I do work with them hitting too.
Half-hour lessons?
Yeah, half-hour lessons.
So you're 10, 15 minutes late.
Yeah, they have to go from, let's say, our cage to another cage in there. It's going to put them behind and put me behind too.
It's like the doctor's office.
Exactly. Yeah. So you try not to shorten them as much. And on the other hand too, I want to mention this. If it's my fault that, let's say, I misjudged or messed up on when your lesson was supposed to be, I'll give them a free lesson.
Sure. Well, that's reasonable. So we'll wrap it up with this to any parents that are out there listening. If your instructor is a noble person that isn't quite business structured as compared to other businesses, and you miss a lesson for homework, or you got home late and your kids got things to do, but it becomes kind of a convenience thing to where it's just not convenient to go and it's convenient to not have to pay. Right. But just look after, because one of the things that I'd like to be able to help develop in our culture is the opportunity for some of these grads, these alums that are coming out of college, and to be able to have a sustainable income as an instructor. But the current situation or condition for them is that they need to work 8 to 3 or 9 to 5 or whatever it is, and then go straight to the batting cage and work till 9. So in order for them to really provide a living where they're able to maintain an income to take care of an apartment or all the cost and overhead of just cost of living, right, but they can't do it on lessons alone. And we would love for the alumni to be able to come in and be able to have something that's attainable for them and not have them have to work 15 hours a day to do what they need to do to provide for themselves and also do something that they love. So. Exactly. Just a little insight on some of the lesson industry. We're also talking a little bit about lefties. The multi-dimensional lefties. So the lefties that slap, bunt, hit. They've got 12 different types of slaps. Mm-hmm. And I was asking you, what are your thoughts on the importance of them being versatile at the plate? Do you talk with your lefties about what to use, when to use it? Are they being versatile? Have you seen many, or if any, lefties become too one-dimensional and kind of fall back on the same thing too? So what are your thoughts on that?
All of the above. I preach it all the time. And I think it is so important to be able, it just makes you a much more dangerous hitter. It opens up the field, and it just creates a lot more situation. And the same thing as far as falling in love with what they do. I love it. We have a kid on our team, I mentioned her several times, Kelly Godden, who's a sprinting champion. Her brother was state champion in sprinting, and this kid was getting by with power slapping and doing some other stuff, but she since has bunted a lot more, and her batting average is .567 right now. It's amazing. And I think one of the things that also helps Sierra Briggs as a hitter is that she's not only a hit away, she's mainly a hit away person, but she will slap or bunt. to add to her dimension. One of the things that they struggle with, lefties, when they do hit away, is they're so used to doing everything with their upper body or their hands, and then instead of using their legs. And that's one of the biggest transition, is get them to stay back and be able to hit the ball where it's pitched and to generate some power.
So are the glamorous trajectory of a power slap, or we love our lefties to swing away. So even the importance of being able to drive the ball when that situation allows you to do it, the less glamorous are kind of the touch and go, the bunts. But we know that in your toughest competitive moment, against your toughest team, against your toughest coach, with the toughest pitcher, a lot of those more power type skills go out the window, because in order for those to be successful, a power slap, a swinging away. I mean, why are lefties so valuable to the lineup? Mm-hmm. Well, when we're facing pitching that isn't giving our free swingers a chance to drive the ball because they're not centering anything, our lefties touch the ball, put pressure on defense. Mm-hmm. So in those tougher moments, it's really the smaller skills that allow you to do what you need to do. Now, for any of you 12 coaches out there that are stylists and are thinking, well, I don't like that and I like that, we like to step in and take the crossover step, that's okay. Just remember that you heard Doug on the last podcast talk about how many championship games he's been in, how many he's won, and there's a certain body of work that we all bring to this table that is the reason why we want to share a lot of these things too, because we can fast forward their learning curve, because how did we learn that? You'd watch something and it would work, it wouldn't work, but this is a lot of years of experience going in. And I very much believe in lefties being versatile. If they don't know what you're doing, well, let me say it this way. If they know what you're doing, the other team knows you're going to slap. They know you're going to bunt. They know you're going to swing. They can pitch to that skill.
Exactly.
But imagine if they're pitching to your slap and they throw you inside,
mm-hmm.
and you square around a bunt.
Mm-hmm.
You've just negated the inside pitch. Or throwing you a changeup because you're running through the box as a touch lefty, getting down that line fast. And so that changeup's supposed to throw your feet and your timing off. And then you drop a bunt, and you've just exposed, And so and the other way around, you've touched the ball a couple times. You've seen our offense, Jim, and we touch and we do a couple things, and then by the fifth or sixth inning, pitcher's a little more worn down. Her locations aren't as sharp. You turn them loose for a swing. You've got all the infield drawn in. Mm-hmm. I think it's just fun to play chess. I'd say mess with the defense, but play chess with the defense. You've got somebody parking everybody inside the baseline. Can you either place the ball, or can you show something that's going to make them flex that left fielder back, pull that shortstop back a little bit, and just make them choose on how they're going to play defense against you.
I agree totally with what you're saying. The better teams are going to try to take something away from you.
Sure.
And the way we've been playing so many times, we play each other and see each other or watch each other play. And so if they know you're not gonna not swing away, they're gonna bunch up on you. And sure. Basically you're gonna have to be able to be either like Matasha Watley to first base, or
sure.
But
it minimizes your chances, because then you mentioned someone like Ken Briggs. If you're not multi-dimensional against him, mm-hmm. he's going to bring everybody in. He's going to pitch you down, and if you're not multi-dimensional, you're going to hit into his defense. I've seen it happen. And mm-hmm. what they're doing is they're playing the percentages. What I'd love for coaches to be able to get to a point to where, you may lose the game, but in the end, you've made their job really hard because they weren't sure what you were going to do. I mean, I think. Jim, you got a lot of years coaching experience. How many times have we seen a lefty up, a short gamer type lefty, and she takes a swing, and that left fielder is in on the dirt, and mm-hmm. she takes one hard swing, and the coach goes, he whistles and he backs her up. It's almost like to the ego or something. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I don't want to get burned past my left fielder. So a lot of times I think you could just show something that a little more power oriented. If you take a hard swing and miss and stand there like they're lucky you missed it, they're going to move the left fielder back. But if you take a little feeble swing and start shaking your head like it's obvious you don't swing away, well, hello, now the left fielder's inside the baseline, like they're going to play everybody in front of you. So
when we had Katie Cochran played for us, when teams hadn't seen her that much, especially out of state teams, and we bat her first, you'd have all the people on the dirt.
And she was one of the rare kids with power that would love to drop a bunt.
Yep.
Yeah, love to drop a bunt. But
second at bat last weekend was just that.
Yeah.
that slash into the left center gap.
That's it, and it, no way, and it split it.
Went to the fence.
And you get somebody like, look what who would think that Maddie Jacobus would hit the ball as hard as she hit it. We have this kid, very soft spoken, not a big kid at all, and has some good genetics. Like she's very athletic and she's very strong for her size. She clubs a couple of balls, Doug, that. And again, you had to get a good pitch to do it with. Those types of multidimensional lefties to me are the most exciting because they're not predictable. When Natasha opened up her power game and combined it with everything else,
Changed her completely.
You could see her in Canada, which is really where I saw her play with the USA team the most. You could see her playing against Japan, soft slap her first at bat, and then I remember her hitting a home run over the bleachers, and that place went nuts for Natasha Watley. And that type of rounded out, you start to become an impact player upon impact players. That it's just really it's pretty interesting to watch. So I would encourage all lefties out there to don't be discouraged if you've been turned over, because your value goes up on the left side when you're getting to first base quicker. So if you're a 290, 295 type right-handed hitter, but you're athletic, let me ask you this, is it ever too late to turn them around in your minds? When I think a lot of people think you need to be doing it for 4 or 5 years, but with a lot of this touch slapping and stuff, sometimes you can really increase the value of a player in their sophomore year. So what are your thoughts on that? Is it ever too late when they get worried about, no, let's not change her now?
I've had people come up and talk to me about several different things like that. If it's a junior or a senior, to me that's a little bit late. I mean, it's sad if I see somebody that just has absolutely blazing speed, like you have Naomi, who basically she's only been slapping a couple years, and she's one that I think's really adjusting to it pretty well. But there's a certain point. I mean, I had one kid that was a senior in high school last year, and their coach wanted her to slap. And the one thing I when I talk to parents at the beginning, because I don't automatically take kids, especially some that are really young, and I tell them, well, if you do this, it's got to be 100% commitment on your part. You can't kind of do this and succeed. You think hitting is so tough? Doing that, moving toward the ball when the ball is moving, is much more difficult. And you're going to fail. And are you willing to fail, a lot early on? Yeah. I mean, we'll keep it simple at the beginning, and you want to, but you want them to be working on. I tell them, you got to be working on this at least 5-6 days a week.
But like anything else, you've got to develop and experience a certain amount of repetitions, because that's the learning curve. So that failure or not being successful the way you'd like is part of how you're going to get to where you want to be.
Exactly.
Right?
And understanding your mistakes. What makes you better? I love getting video. I ask all my hitters to send me video so I can see what you're doing. I'm usually pretty good at telling them what I see. Of course, some of these jacked up films are like from a mile away, and you can't even recognize a uniform, let alone their.
Well, I think even some of the GoPros have got a little better from the fisheye thing that looks like you're on a security camera in a hotel.
Right.
But again, we're getting more and more videos though available through cameras and different things like that. You go to any given game now, and you see a lot more of those cameras clipped up to the backstop.
Right.
I keep telling our coaches, you guys got to watch what you talk about behind the backstop back there, because it's they got disclaimers all over the place.
The other thing I like to do is have kids set goals for themselves.
You're talking about that personal. How do they set personal goals? What would you recommend?
Well, I have personal goals and team goals, and I ask almost every kid that comes in, "Do you have goals for yourself?" And they think they do, but I want to make all CIF. I want to do this. And I said, well, how are you going to do that? You have to outline a roadmap for yourself to be successful at that. And what makes you not successful, first of all? Well, I swing at bad pitches, or I strike out too much, or I pop up too much. So we want to scale that down. How do we scale this down? So basically, you talk about the strike zone, what you look for on, let's say, first, when I don't have any strikes, I'm looking for waist to my knees type pitch. I always want to do that or take away a certain type of the plate.
Right.
And then
it's never rocket science.
Or I can say, I want to develop, let's say it's hitting away. I want to have at least one at bat every game that I'm going to swing away. This isn't like a friendly or something like that. And to be successful in this, I'm going to work on this, this, and this. Yeah. So it's those type of things. Or how I can be a better teammate by, be the first one out in the field to congratulate somebody after they sacrificed bunted or did something like that.
Sure.
If a person's struggling, to get in there and either give them a pat on the back or, we got your back, that type of thing. So be one of those guys. And that's one thing the colleges look for too, I really believe, don't you?
I think that behavior shows itself whether you're looking for it or not. So when it shows itself in a respectful, honorable way, it gets noticed, even if somebody's not looking for it. And then obviously when it shows itself in a good light, it definitely is noticed. Jim, we don't. I'm going to say this on the air because it's the truth. Because we don't really talk a lot about Wendy. But when I think about all of the hitters in our organization, his daughter was not a power hitter who would run into a ball if you threw it where she was swinging. She really learned how to hit both sides of the plate. Like she has had some of our biggest moments as far as historical at bats to kind of change big games and stuff like that. What was her approach? And was there a point, whether it was through the lessons or at the, we got to a point where she was coming in here at Wednesdays at 8:30 and we were working on specific things, but what was her goal mindset? And then what did you see with her involvement to where she got to that level where she was really more of a professional minded hitter?
I think once Wendy started in the backyard, but she bought into everything you told her, and we'll try it. And I know the one thing that you did with her was the early step and stay back. And from that point on, she, I think, was always ready for and never fooled with changeups.
Right.
She was back, and if she guessed changeup and she had stayed back, then everything went her way. And then on the other stuff, we could the low outside pitch. You guys worked on that.
We kind of specialized some areas, but she was not really a kid that was saying, "I want to be an All-American, Dad. I want to be the. I want to be the. I want to be the." She wasn't, and so she really. So that's kind of why she kind of is here when we really are thinking about our players in our organization. But when we really think about some of these key at bats, in her, was it 2 years with us on our club? She had some great at bats, but not a kid that because I think this is the majority of them. They don't all have to be bound for this and NPF and this, but if they apply themselves, I can tell you that in my mind, Wendy delivered the goods on our team. She did. She really did. And I don't think it's rocket science. I don't.
No, and she just, like I said, she bought into what you said and she worked at it. I think Wendy, no secret, didn't have the biggest drive of any kid you've ever coached. Yeah. But she obviously had power. She could, hit the ball when she made contact. She hit the ball. But I think she worked at what you said and she bought into it, so she didn't have that resistance for the most part. Not that you guys always got along.
Right.
But in the stuff when it came to being in the box, she bought into it and trusted you. She trusted something. In this case, it was you. Probably as much as her own ability.
I'm going to call it the system because in her biggest at bat for our earliest, biggest win, I believe what got her through it was the affirmation of, I've worked on this. Now just do what I've worked on. And that's really what it was.
Was that in 2007?
That was 2007. Yeah. But it was a timeout before the at bat. But it really was, how many times have we been in cage 2 working on the same situation? So what do you think is going to happen here? And she tells me, and then things kind of played out in front of her. And that's very, very satisfying because that's really a level that we want all players to get to. And the hit was historical, but that's not to define Wendy. That hit doesn't define her. What defines her is just, to know who she was. And part of that is like for myself, that love-hate relationships are the good, I don't know why I always get a picture of the officer and the gentleman.
Was this against Gary's
team? It was
team,
against Batbusters, yeah. But officer and gentleman were Lou Gossett Jr. is, he's calling Richard Gere mayonnaise the whole time. And if you ever saw that movie, and he's trying to run him out of the military.
Right.
And I think he's got him doing push-ups in the rain and, boom, boom, boom. And he's like, how come you haven't quit, mayonnaise? How come you haven't quit? How come you haven't quit? And finally, Richard Gere looks up and he's crying. And he goes, because I got nowhere to go. Like, you're not getting rid of me. I'm not going to quit. And I think there's There's the influence of old school coaches that I've had and stuff. So part of that, I don't know how much you really can't get away with a lot of that nowadays, but it is pushing kids to the limit. Is seeing, is this that fear thing? Is that, oh, you're temperamental, and then try to get them in that pocket, because ultimately you want resiliency in the moment. And I've always been most satisfied by how we fight, not if we win the fight. You know, you can win the fight, but not like the way that you want it. You know, we can watch boxing or UFC or anything like that, and some guy, the fighter will win on points, but, you know, in the end, the other one imposed their will or something like that. So it's just kind of interesting. But I think it's a good point. So set realistic goals for yourself. And if you set high goals, that's great. Shoot for them. If you're shooting for, you know, I want to play at UCLA, and you're 10 or 8, and you're going to the camps with the posters, and gosh, you're in 8th grade and they didn't recruit you, so you're done. You know, kind of joking. But now they haven't went your way. Does that mean your dreams are shattered and it was all for nothing? No. Change that to UCSB and now appeal to Santa Barbara. I mean, just take a left turn with your turn. I think it's important. So set your goals, but also don't define yourselves if you don't. You know, Melinda, our administrator, bowls on Tuesdays. So every Tuesday, she calls me in the morning and she's shooting for a certain number. Maybe it's a 600 series. I'm not a bowler or something like that. And I'll tell her, then shoot for 1290. And she'll just laugh at me. I'll go, shoot for something higher than 600 and you'll hit 598. I mean, why not? You know, but I think goals are important. Okay, here's one kind of brought up when you talked about being a good teammate. So I want to bring up this topic. Have you, or do you, pull kids in the middle of an inning after they make a mistake?
I don't.
How do you feel about that? What would be our advice to coaches out there that get in that moment and listen, we've all been there. Someone just missed a fly ball, dove for it, bases were loaded, it got past her, you know, this or that, you know, but pulling a kid off the field in the middle of an inning.
I just think the damage it can do instead of, I think sometimes we forget why we're doing this. And some of the times that's done because of our own ego. And we're sitting there, you know, convincing ourselves that, you know, you made me look bad by making that mistake somehow or whatever. I know there's some very good coaches in the past that if a kid can't bunt, you know,
We
right
talked
away,
about that a little bit, right?
Yeah, with Phil.
But especially in today's age where self-esteem is of the utmost importance.
Right.
And then there's a fragility to the self-esteem that's so important. And so I think you need to be a really good communicator to make sure that damage is not done.
No, I've pulled people after the inning was over.
Sure, but isn't that the time to do it?
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, isn't that what they do in hockey? They do like a line change or something, or you know, it's like, you know, there's a time to do it. But I'm really trying to think. So help me. Have I ever pulled a kid off a field
I
in
don't
the middle of an
think
inning?
so. No, and I
That's always a line to me. Like for a big of an ass that I can be in the competitive moment, I would never lose sight of what that might feel like. My God, or that would just be like, whew, that would be rough. So understanding that people get competitive, because I don't believe that coaches do it to hurt kids, but I think where we come in, and anyone that wants to hear the advice, don't do it. Just don't do it. If you can. If you can, well, you know, I'm trying to think of, well, what parameters does it get there? 4 errors in an inning, you know, because we all know the ball's going to find her, right?
Always.
But sometimes you have to laugh it off. I know it. You're thinking, oh, what are you talking about, Rico? Sometimes you got to say, what the?
Yeah.
Colorado last year. You know, we've been around a while. We had a really good game going against Las Vegas Rebels. Great pitcher. You know, came out there, and I believe I'm not exaggerating. I'm going to say between 6 and 10 fly balls and pop-ups we missed. I mean, it was like.
Sounds like this
Doug came in this weekend saying we were both kind of mentioned that our teams played so bad this weekend that rec teams walked out on us and said we're going to stay in rec ball, we're going to stay at the higher level. But you know, they were beginning level mistakes that, you know, our team was making, and there's that tipping point where the team starts to know, and they're wondering, are we in trouble? Like, this is bad. And then you bring them together. And you have that moment, and it's hard to find people. It's really hard to find because you have to pull back. You almost got to keep something on your phone, like a life or death, something that kind of says, okay, it's not as bad as this thing that's tearing me up inside competitively. It's not that bad. And laugh at the moment, because remember, this happens in the big leagues. There are still blooper shows. You see the best and the worst in the major leagues. And so the game's going to come get you. But don't go get the game, and don't go get your kids. Now, I guess we're not talking about pitchers. That can be something you got to make a move in the middle of an inning. So don't pitchers' parents, don't take this the wrong way. But try to avoid at all costs, and get yourself through the inning. And know that when somebody's down, they don't need to be kicked when they're down. I mean, definitely. You can actually raise a better person through that embarrassing mistake if you care about the person, and then address things. You got to know when to turn the fire up, and you got to know when the fire doesn't.
Well,
need
we
to be
would have
there.
had to replace half our team at one time if we were going to do that, because it was so contagious. And the week before, we won a tournament and played really, really well on offensively, defensively. Just this week started off bad right in the first inning, and didn't get much better at the end. The last game, we had Mike Stiff has got a really good team, and we lost to him 7-6. But and we came back during that game, but defensively, I mean, it was laughable, really.
Yeah.
It got to the point where whoever touched the ball was the next person to make a mistake.
And with all of your years of experience, the competitive level doesn't go down on the inside. You just manage it a lot better. And that's the good news. I just want to say, almost like we're alcoholic sponsors to all the coaches out there, that we're behavior sponsors, all the ones kind of goofing it up and kind of making a mess of things. You're still going to feel the same, but it's just so important to kind of keep everything in balance. And I'm not going to tell you you're going to enjoy it, but I think we've created or maybe I have created losing as part of the design of our learning. We're not trying to win every game all year. There's certain times you have to let things play out. There's certain times you have to let things be exposed, let things be able to fall in the pocket. But, there's no level of the game where at some point you're going to have one of those innings, those circus, blah, 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 and it can happen. And I think we talked last podcast about first and third defenses, and how a lot of times working on first and third defense practice can just turn into kind of a circus. So yeah, try to avoid it at all costs. And if you have a strong opinion otherwise, find a way to get a hold of Doug or I, and we'll have a conversation. And
one thing I'd
love to hear you.
wanted to mention is, remember on our last thing we were talking about the base running on the first and third as far as the runner.
Yeah. Do you need the bases again?
I think this guy's
first base, second base, third base.
This guy's the base runner. He's half full, so he's lighter.
Okay, there
So
you
he
go.
gets
It's a slapper.
And
Anyways,
anyways,
now what's this though? Is this home? There's home.
that's first base. Third base is
this was first.
Okay, that's a long way to first. Okay, third is over here. How about
There you
that?
go. All right,
Okay,
everybody
so-
see that? First, second, third,
Okay.
home. It's kind
So,
of a
there's
diamond.
a base runner on third, and this kid walks, and then just goes all the way out here.
Yeah.
Now the question, and I had completely two different answers from this front umpire, which doesn't give you a lot of confidence.
Establishing the base path.
Right. And so what happens is when
Shortstop.
the pitcher gets the ball,
Throws you the
and
shortstop.
shows the shortstop or your second baseman, let's say he's right here.
Okay, could be there.
And so what can this girl do? She can go this direction, but coming back, my question was,
Does she have to return
come
on
back-
that same path?
or have to come back straight? And I got two completely different answers. The first guy says, well, once the person gets the ball, she has to take a straight line back to the base. Okay. The next umpire says, no, once she establishes that baseline, then she has to go back this way. And I said, so she can come back this way? And he goes, well, maybe you can.
So, and that's why, out of those two opinions, because again, maybe we have three umpires listening. Maybe Bob, Raphael, you're listening.
Or maybe
So
one
they
of
can
them-
chime in.
Yeah.
But, let's say when a base runner's coming around third and that wide turn, and that catcher gets the ball, she comes straight back to the base. She's not, she's coming from second base. She's going a wide turn to score home. Oh, the ball gets to home a little quick. She goes straight to the base. She's not going to come back
Right.
this way.
Right.
So I think there's most likely truth to when the defensive player gets the ball, it kind of changes that dynamic. So we can get an umpire to chime in on that. But to me, it just sounds funny if she has to take this deep turn back. I know within the rule book you're describing that, and I'm not a rules expert, but haven't got myself in too much trouble with them. But that just seems, I don't know, unrealistic if she's got to come all the way back out there. Because I do like, and I guess at some point you ask Bill Conroy because he's running that play and kind of what he's run into like that. But I think that's important. So, all right, we're going to move along too. Let me ask you both this. So this is to all of our parents and coaches of 14 and under teams, and they've got their pitchers going to pitching lessons. And so, do they all need to throw 63 miles an hour to be successful? Do you think too many pitchers are trying to kill themselves trying to throw hard?
It depends what they're doing as far as background. You're a parent that did this.
I think at some point in time, at least with Katie, I realized Katie came up the same time as Terry Mowat. They battled each other in rec ball. And Katie was always a couple miles an hour behind Taryn. At some point, Katie just stopped, and Taryn just kept going, until she threw what she threw at Arizona. But you realize that, okay, if you're not going to have the speed that's really the speed that's going to get you to the promised land, you better have something else. Control, movement, whatever. And I think it's important at that time to work with what you have. Work with those tools. Don't try to be something you're not. And I think we saw that with Brooke a couple years ago. She's certainly, sophomores don't win nationals. That's an anomaly. And she wasn't a kid throwing 68 miles an hour. We had one of those. It didn't work. But boy, you hit your spots and you can move the ball. And so I think you need to take what you're given. And
So that's kind of good news to all those kids hitting 59 and wanting to go see someone for antidepressants because they can't get over the 59 mile an hour hump.
We have a
But
kid throwing slow and slower last year, and she shut everybody she faced down.
just an opinion, people. What do you think, Doug?
I agree with what you just said, and I think especially at this level. But I think one of my problems with there's not near the number of hard throwers in softball that there used to be. And I think one things that coaches start teaching kids as soon as they get them, like they 10 years old or whatever, to throw all these different pitches. And they basically feel like they're not teaching them something if they're not throwing them and working on a different pitch. I knew when Lisa Fernandez started out, she basically, for the longest time, just used 3 pitches.
Sure.
And she was incredibly successful with both of them. I see very few great change-ups. And for whatever reason, it seems like kids don't really develop that.
Shouldn't that be
later on
like
in their
the
stage.
second pitch they develop?
Yeah, I would think. But again, you see the difference, and it seems like a lot of pitchers that for the Midwest, they seem to be, and a lot of out-of-state pitchers are more dominant than we have in California. I'm trying to look at all the good pitchers that we have out here. And it's just, I don't see us having the numbers that we used to have.
We've mastered digression. I mean, we're all over the place. Where there's so many different things, so many different opinions, so many that we kind of lost that pure. And then somehow when we see somebody that has that true pure motion from start to beginning, it looks smooth, it whips, it's got everything, but it seems like it's fewer and farther between to kind of find that. I want people to understand, there's a lot of people chasing things that they feel like they need to chase to be successful. And that's the other thing that I want to reassure them with is that hitting targets, hitting spots. Would you rather hit a bullseye with a BB gun or blow out your neighbor with a shotgun and you weren't aiming for your neighbor? So, I think we can attest that it doesn't always have to be these numbers, these big high numbers that, so if you're down there, you can't get it over. You see people posting, she just hit 53 and she's 9 or, and all these. And so here it comes. Here it comes. So what happens when she doesn't hit the number? Just make sure they're okay when they don't hit the number. Okay, be careful because we could really take a sharp turn with this podcast and talk about what happens when there's too much pressure on the kids.
Well, Tony, let me ask you, you call a lot of pitches. Would you rather have a kid that's got all 17 pitches and is pretty good around the plate, or a kid that throws a fastball and a changeup 61 and 53 and can hit the glove every time?
We should get Steve Langenfeld in and call him on the phone. You know, Megan Langenfeld came with, I think, 22 pitches and 7 toolboxes and 3 computers, and you know, this whole thing of aeronautics and you know, again, you have to get them. Jim used the term buy-in, but to understand what it is that's effective, and it really was reduced down to one pitch and then sprinkling in the others. And then we've done it with different styles of pitchers, so it's not like there's one particular style or there's one pitch that we like. It's really trying to find what is it that you do best. And let's make sure that we work with that. I'm also satisfied, though, with a certain amount of ownership, and it drives the competitive part of our coaching staff nuts that we've lost games because I'd rather have them own it and make a decision on their own and again, take that whole experience with them, only because I know myself as a player is I played for a system that was systematic, but also gave you ownership. And the complement of those two, you walk out knowing you can do it on your own as well.
Right.
You know, so I think that's important. Here's another one now. Okay, think about the prettiest swings in softball that you've seen in your time coaching. So as soon as I ask you that question, is there a name that pops up? You don't hear it a lot because there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of short choppiness, there's a lot of anxiety. So it's not like you got a ton of them. But prettiest swing.
The kid that went to Florida that played for Mike Stiff a couple years ago from the Valley. She's probably a sophomore or junior right now in Florida.
Oh,
Starting with L.
Yes, Lorenz.
Lorenz.
Yeah.
I liked her swing.
Yeah, great hitter. Beautiful player.
And most of the kids that can hit both sides of the field, to be able to stay back on off-speed pitches and maybe make an adjustment.
Katie had a pretty good swing, Cochran.
She did have a very good swing. Her dad was a huge Ted Williams fanatic, and really preached that you know, the hitting zone, what batting average was at a certain part of the plate. But you're right, Katie did have a.
I think Dre Harrison used to have a really pretty swing.
She did have a pretty swing.
Right,
too.
she was good. Now go back to early days. So I don't know. I'm trying to think. Did I see enough of Leah O'Brien's swing? You know,
she had a pretty swing.
You know, pretty
Leah,
swing.
Very, very pretty swing.
What do you remember of Leah Paulson? We're going back into the 90s.
Well,
now.
Leah actually played for me, and
She had a pretty swing. I know she was an effective lefty. She could have
was.
been a quirky lefty though. That was
she
really
was
effective.
one that she also did some slapping, but she changed that as she got. But Leah was a very good all-around player. I think that people forget about. Obviously a first baseman, but very athletic.
Jessica Schultz played for us, had a really pretty swing, really nice finish, and could hit to all powers. How about you, Jim? Anyone stand out?
I'm trying to think. I immediately think of a lefty because I think a lefty
They just come in naturally.
it just looks like a nice swing, but they all kind of blend together. I'm taking it out of the slapper realm and just keeping it with hitters, and I can't think of anybody that just comes to mind, but it just seems like so
WT.
often you make the comment
Windy
that
Trott.
it's just that natural lefty swing.
Windy Trott.
I wouldn't say that.
WT. He's so. Just for future points right there. And for Father's Day, you got to throw out the Windy Trott.
You watch in the pros. Look at a lefty and a righty swing. It's just something about the lefty swing. I don't know.
Righties get it done, but lefties are the most fun to watch, right? All right, Mr. Myers, how about this? What are your biggest pet peeves?
I've got a few of them, but I think one is lack of hustle. Really drives me crazy when or a player that they feel like they're entitled, and people that don't respect the game, and that can be in a variety of ways.
Ultimately, that responsibility falls upon hopefully at earliest point, their coaches.
Exactly.
Right? To teach them that respect. I always had my only, I wouldn't call this a fantasy, but the only thing I've ever thrown out to the USA program is I'd love to be part of the USA program, and I'm the first guy that they see in their room that before they even go pick up their uniforms, they're going to learn about the flag, They're going to learn about USA.
I
They're going to
love
learn
that.
about some history. They're going to feel it so that when they touch that uniform for the first time, there's more than just a number that I wanted, and that I made the USA team. I mean, I think that responsibility has to, at some point, they need to be shown that.
One thing I used to do when at Modern Day and from other places, I used to have, before the kids got their uniform, I would have them, or their number, I would have them write a letter to who had it before, and basically ask
Nice.
them, for the opportunity to wear their number.
Nice. That's great.
And I think that went over. Most of the people that received it, they were more happy to oblige and were really honored that people would do that.
Did you ever retire any numbers in your programs?
We did. Well, Modern Day has a special requirement before you're allowed to. And so basically it was, you have to be CIF Player of the Year. That being said, we had some players that were better than some of these players that didn't. But,
They didn't meet the
I mean,
criteria.
like Kelsey Colan's number was retired. Marissa Young, Tia Bollinger's. Most recently, they had Priscilla Martinez, who played for Modern Day a couple of years ago, and when they won CIF, and she had her number retired. But there's a bunch of them that everybody from Christina Clark that. I don't know if you remember her or not. She's
Yeah, absolutely.
phenomenal.
Fresno State.
That kid, you could give her any bat, she'd wake up in the middle of the night, she'll hit the ball.
Right. How about you, Jim? Pet peeves?
Taking the game for granted.
Taking the game for granted.
Consciously.
Consciously or subconsciously, or both?
Consciously, especially because, and I said it to the kids this past weekend. Don't assume you have tomorrow. You could trip and I pointed to KP and just blow an ankle or knee out, and you're done playing. You may never play at this level again. And I think back to when I played, and that was a long time ago, and not to any level at all. But I remember the practices. I remember how much fun it was to go out there and just shag balls and field and hit, more than the games even.
Mm-hmm.
So at practice, just don't take anything for granted. Play everything like it could be the last time you put the glove on. And hustle. It just bugs me. And that kind of dovetails into it. Just act like you want to be there. We talk about, we're going to pay to watch you guys today.
Sure.
But and if you do that and everybody does that, I think the team atmosphere is great and good things happen. But
We're pretty big on making sure you run everything out to first base.
One thing, when you coach high school too, so
no, I didn't.
I thought you did.
No.
You were helped out or whatever.
He was a lurker in high school, so
Yeah, just,
people might have thought he was.
Yeah.
But
You have different challenges when you're a high school coach because you're seeing these kids, every day.
every day, right?
Yeah, we're in travel mainly. You're seeing them during the weekends.
Yeah.
Obviously during the summer a little bit more, but still. And you see kids when they've had a bad day, when they've been going to class all day, and just things. You have to kind of weed that out because occasionally you'll have a phenomenal kid that she's just having a bad day. Something.
And there's something bigger than softball going on.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to kind of understand that instead of just unloading on that person.
I think we'll do a whole podcast, if not close to one, on the bigger picture with your players. Like I said, there's, and especially right now with some current events, we can tie a lot of good things in. All right, to wrap up the last few minutes, this is kind of like to get to know you guys now because you have so many of your own personal fan clubs out there. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions. You're going to answer them quick, and this is just off the top of your head stuff, all right?
Okay.
On a scale from 1 to 10, how strict were your parents growing up?
I'd say about a 7.
About a 7? Jim?
Probably about that. Yeah.
I'm going to give mine about a 4. It seemed quite nice when I was that age. Should have died about 12 times. I'm going to start with Jim on this one. What was your favorite toy growing up?
Oh, God. Favorite toy?
Yeah. What'd you spend the most time with?
Bicycle.
The bike. Schwinn?
Schwinn Stingray.
Stingray, of course.
And rode until I eventually rode bicycle across country.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And Canada, wasn't it?
Canadian Rockies, West Coast a few times, yeah.
Next time we'll have you throw a calf up here on the desk so everyone can see the testimony in Jim's legs. How about you, Doug?
I thought you were talking about something completely different. I actually used to ride bikes too. I used to.
Well, it
ride
could
down
be your
the
G.I.
city.
Joe. It could be anything. It could be.
No, I had the All-Star baseball card game, and I used to play with that all the time. or the motorized football,
Football game?
Oh, yeah.
With the
With
cotton
electron-
balls?
Yeah, and so you'd put them.
Boy, when I got my first Super Toe,
Uh-huh.
that Super Toe came out, and it used to, because the way that thing was it would kick field goals, and the leg would come back and it would swing back, and it would. And it would I always used to think it was Tom Dempsey because remember the guy for the Saints that had half a foot, and he had set the record for 63 yard field goal. He had the longest field goal for the longest time, and when Super Toe came out, that was just they gave you a little kind of a fake field with all the lines and stuff. So even though you're kicking it from here to there, it's 60 yards in your mind.
About the baseball, I used to be a big baseball collector when I was young, and then when I went off to college, of course, they got rid of, dumped all that. I was imagining what those cards would be
Gosh.
worth.
You know how many people between like record albums and things like that, or even toys. I mean, the stuff that we grew up with, the people that bought the first Star Wars toys and
Well, I'll
still
bring
have
mine
those.
in next week. I got them, my baseball.
Do you have them? Okay, bring them
Oh,
in.
wow.
That would be outstanding. Here's a simple one: cake or pie?
Oh boy, it depends on which cake or what pie.
You
I like
both?
I like cherry pie.
All right. Okay, Jim.
Can I have a little of each?
A little of each. I'm a cake. I'm a cake guy. Boy, you guys are like like both of them. If you could eat 2 foods for the rest of your life, only these 2 you get to keep.
That's
what
funny,
are your favorites?
I ask those to kids all the time,
Mm-hmm.
that type of stuff. I like chicken and I like steak.
Pretty basic.
Well, that covers everything. Yeah.
Well, you could have Italian food.
Well, you could
have,
repeat. I mean, it's really a
Oh, so I can say like
Yeah.
Mexican and Italian?
sure.
Oh, I can do that then.
Sure, if you go with the genres, all
I
right.
thought you meant real specific.
What's your most embarrassing childhood memory?
Oh boy, let me see.
I'll give you a second to think about that real quick. I'm 9 years old. I'm the triple king. I hit more triples than anybody else. I don't know why didn't hit it far enough to get around the bases, but far enough to get to third. I was fast enough, and booking around second, slide into third, and I hadn't gone to the restroom before the game. So I relieved myself as I slid into third. Now I was a pretty intense, respected player for 9, but the third baseman didn't seem to realize that, so he immediately yells to everybody at the field, he peed his pants, and he's pointing at me. Coach comes running out with a towel, proceeds to start to wipe my crotch.
Oh, my God.
After about 3 wipes, realizes that wasn't the thing to do. Then I realized I shouldn't probably do what I was about to do, but I threw dirt on it, which made it a big orange spot, and but I'll tell you what, I finished the game. I wasn't so embarrassed I was going to go home. I stayed there.
I remember my dad traded me to another team.
Oh, man.
One of the reasons is he didn't want me to be in that situation where I'd be, but it looked horrible. All my friends.
It certainly
your
sounds
dad-
horrible.
Yeah, your dad traded you to
Let's leave it at that one. I like that. Jimbo?
Oh, I can remember Pony League. We were playing up in Camarillo and won a few tournaments, and I led off the tournament by throwing a grand slam to a guy named Jack Clark.
Oh my God!
Did he dig
That
it? Did he
you should be
dig in
proud
with
of
his
that.
foot the way he used to, the way he did before he
Well,
rocked the
the ball
Dodgers?
hasn't come down yet.
Okay.
But we ended the tournament.
That was a swing I liked. It was
With,
different, but I liked it.
I
Not
hit
Jack
a-
Clark. It was the other one.
Yeah, I hit a ball to center field, and it got literally through the webbing on the center fielder's glove, and I was waved around to third base. So when I went in, I got tagged out, and tournament's over. That was the last out, and I jumped up and went at the third baseman for tagging me out. I was going to kill him. And my coach jumped on me. The assistant coach came out. I remember my dad coming out and on the field, and I was a pretty good-sized guy even when I was 14. And I remember my dad just grabbed me, and he was a big guy, and just goes, "What the hell are you doing? You know what kind of jackass you look like, And I thought, oh my God, what was I doing? I just totally lost it.
Wow.
But yeah, everybody there thought I was a raving lunatic. So yeah.
And now he's an attorney. See, kids, you got to have something that leads into your career. Can you think of a favorite movie quote?
Oh boy.
What's one that stands out? What's one that pops in your head when I mention
My
that?
favorite all-time sports movie was Miracle.
The hockey.
Basically, it was that line. It was, "Do you believe in miracles?" And I don't even watch hockey on TV, but that movie, I played that thing, and
Pretty inspirational.
Every time I hear that quote, it just or anything by Vin Scully.
Sure. Well, Dodger baseball. How about you, Jim?
I would say it's two. The funny one would be the Peter Sellers Pink Panther movie when the dog in the lobby, and he goes, "Did your dog bite?" No, and he bites him, and he goes, "I thought you said your dog didn't bite." And the guy goes, "That's not my dog." And I always like the Clint Eastwood.
Oh, make my day.
A man has to know his limits.
Yeah.
Man has to know his
He has to
limits.
know
Clint
his
Eastwood.
Okay.
So to all of you under 50, sorry, but go check out the Pink Panther. And, I'm going to say one that I don't think either of you would know if I said, if I'm here and you're here, isn't it our time? You guys don't know that? And shame on anybody that knows that. That's from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And that's where...
Oh, I do that, yeah.
So Spicoli's in there and he orders a pizza. He orders a pizza during class, and Mr. Hand's like, "What are you doing?" This, and he's like, "If I'm here and you're here, isn't this our time?" So it's pretty.
I remember that now. That's great.
I've got a bunch of these questions. We'll do a few every time that we talk a little bit because there's just kind of
love it.
fun stuff. All right, we're wrapping it up. Juliana gave me an hour. So it's 11:20. I think we're at 57 minutes or close to. So I'm always proud when I'm on schedule. It doesn't happen often. Any closing wisdom for the week, guys? Wisdom.
One thing about recruiting, just want to mention this briefly, and I mean this is the whole. And I understand the rules might be changing in April. Is that true? Where they could go different?
Fingers crossed.
And there's a lot of insanity. It's probably changed softball more than almost anything from the exposure games that we play right now, and a lot of the way people act, and how to act around colleges. Basically, you just be yourself. Don't think the situation too much, and do the intangibles. Like the thing we're talking about, our pet peeves. You're always hustling. You're always being a great teammate, because they might see you make 3 or 4 plays the whole day, and that's it. They might see a few of your swings, but what they will see and they will watch for is your mannerisms in the dugout and how
Sure.
you carry yourself.
So take care of your behavior.
Right.
It'll pay off in the long run. Jimbo? Give us something that ties in with Dead Man's World.
It's just softball.
Oh.
And I mean that because
Yeah, it does tie in with Dead
they're
Man's World.
I've got friends, they got kids that are, 14, 15. That's all they talk about is, schools and colleges and scholarships. And I firmly believe as long as you've got some ability and the desire, there's a school out there for you. It may not be the school you want, but keep it in focus also. You're there to get an education. You're there to get out of there because 10 or 15 years down the line, you're going to go to work, not play softball. And don't lose perspective. And especially when you're 14 and under or 16 and under, just keep your eye on the long picture, not the short one.
And I'll give everyone some perspective that they don't know Jim, but Jim sees and deals with death as part of his job. So you see the final out and how that has come to be in quite a bit. So when someone like that says it's just softball, catch yourself when you're saying the opposite, that softball is everything, and you don't realize that you're obsessing right now. Remember, our role ultimately here is to help people shape a better experience so that no matter what ends up happening with your daughter, if she hits that at 16 years old that I want to be an artist or whatever it is, ultimately what do you want? Do you want her to do things your way only without happiness, or should she follow your examples, follow your guidance as parents and coaches, but ultimately her happiness comes first? So be careful, people, with what you're talking about and the amount of times that you are talking about it, because in the end, our responsibility as the older people in life with more experience is to create a balanced experience to these younger people. And if you're not careful, you're going to find out way too late and way too hard that it went the wrong way. So, that's just a little bit of serious advice, because again, there is some, to me, serious value with us sitting here and kind of passing on our experiences. So, guys, thanks again. And I don't know. I mean, we can't zoom in because we don't have a cameraman, but Jim is looking sharp today. I don't think I've seen this out of him. Usually he's wearing a Firecracker sweatshirt from pre-2005 that he was crumbled up in the corner of his truck. And so I think something's going on today. He's got a job interview or something. So anyways, thanks, guys, and we'll see everybody
Thank you.
in a week or
Thanks.
two.